should it normally take to go through a dyslexia program that is developmentally built, developmentally appropriate?
From a scientific perspective, do we have a study that says how many kids are remediated at 80, 90, 100, 120, 140, 160? Nobody's done that kind of a longitudinal study. It'd be extremely expensive. And what I mean by that is, in our study on measuring the effectiveness of the Now Foundations program, and measuring the way that Now Foundations could close the gap on kids who are 8 to 10 years of age, who are reading at the 5th percentile, we only were able to give them a dose of instruction, which was basically 80 sessions. Not because we expect them all to be remediated and done. That's just how far $1 million would take us with the number of kids that we were working with the amount of staff it was required to do the testing, deliver the treatment. I'm the person who did all the teacher training in those studies with Joe Torgerson and his FSU group and the Morris Center and myself. And without all that money, even with all that money, we couldn't do more than give each kid 80 sessions. So we know that in that model, we did 2 hours a day, 5 days a week of one-on-one. It helped answer a very important question, which was just instruction should always be done every day. What we know from both developmental instruction training and from stroke rehab, neurorehabilitation training, daily instruction is part of that proper recipe to build skills as strong as possible, as is time of intensity, like at least 45 minutes a day, unless we're talking about a 4 or 5-year-old, then it might be 20. But typically, you're talking about school-age kids, age 7 and up, at least 45 minutes a day, always 5 days a week. So you're trying to get those skills going, get those skills built. And with those skills going on, then we have the best chance to begin to close the gap. So in that study, it was 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. And the average gain across the whole group of 30 students, the average gain was from 5th percentile to the 45th percentile in the ability to decode or sound out words. So that was like 22 to 26 standard score points. That's like, standard scores are a mean of 100 and a plus or minus of 15 points. These are kids who are scoring in the 70s on the professional grade decoding testing. And 8 weeks later, when we retested them, they're scoring 94, 96, 72 plus 24 is 96. They're smack dab in the average range of function. The real measure of what happens with that improved decoding skills is what happens to their placement in special ed. And in that peer-reviewed randomized controlled trial study, which for those who don't fully understand what that means, it's a 500-page grant. It goes to the NICHD division of NIH, which is the child division of NIH, to be vetted by a panel of national experts in literacy. There's 10 other people competing against you to get this $1 million funding. And the panel reads all of your research, study, design, how you're going to select people, how you're going to measure them, what you're going to do. And they rank your study based on what they know about the science of dyslexia, the science of reading, the science of learning, all the science of brain development. And only the studies that are in the top 3% actually get funded. So our study ranked solidly in the top 3%. It was funded for $1 million. But the question was, when we've shown that you can change those skills, what happens 1 and 2 years later? That was one of the first studies in the nation to show that we know how to exit children out of special ed. That study, one of its scientific findings was 40% of kids who got that Now Foundations developmental intervention, 40% of them left special ed. Why? Because they read on grade level. They were in the average range of reading skills. They were no longer impaired in their reading accuracy or comprehension. Some were fully strengthened in fluency and some were not. As a group, overall, they didn't make huge changes in fluency. And so some people have misinterpreted that data to say, well, you can't change fluency in 8 to 10-year-olds. It's too late. Well, when you do a study like that, and we know it's a study of a developmental disorder, think of it this way. Stephen, if we just taught you how to ride a road bike and you're 40, and we want to put you in a race with other 40-year-olds who've been riding bikes for 20 years, Well, yeah, you both know how to do it, but they have 20 years more practice than you do. So your speed, your automaticity, your skill level is not going to be on par with your peers who have 20 years experience. So it shouldn't surprise people that when we just taught these kids how to read, because they were reading at the fifth percentile, they had no decoding skills. When we took them to the 45th percentile, they know how to do it, they're accurate with it, but it's going to take a range of experience and practice to build that fluency of reading. That same study brought the kids back 2 years later and showed that now the majority of them now had fluency on par with the decoding skills, and they're all now up there at their IQ level. So that's the other important piece to understand is you might change a skill, what its outcome. So that study told us what 80 hours would do. We don't know what 100 hours would do, what 120 hours would do. Speaking not from scientific research, speaking from a brain scientist who's now been doing this work since I was 19 years old, so 38 years. In the clinical environment, we know the average is what we're going to tell families is about a conservative average is about 160 hours, plus or minus 20. Might be 140, might be 180. About 90% of individuals of any age who are mild or moderately impaired are going to finish the Now Foundations program at that level. And we're not going to need to do more work, and they're going to keep building the skills stronger over time. But we do have outliers. When we look at the whole range, we have some students who finish in 80 hours. We had one person who was paying for it himself. He was 25 years old. He's about to go to grad school. He was just finishing grad school. He's about to get his first job in the federal government. He's really excited about this job, and he knew he's going to have better reading skills because he's going to work in the patent office. And so he paid for his own intervention. And let me tell you, he worked his tail off. He made sure the tutors worked every minute of every hour he paid for. He finished it in about 65 hours, which is not typical. But if you're more mildly impaired and you're highly motivated and you're still using the skills outside of the sessions, you're increasing your intensity and your frequency and your level of engagement in the practice. All those things are going to make the brain build the skills faster. So anywhere from as low as 55, 65 hours, but it goes as high as 240 hours if there's a severe dyslexia and there's a severe language processing problem and there's moderate to severe ADHD, which doesn't affect our ability to change reading skills. It just makes your learning experience less efficient. So in a 45-minute session, you might get fewer words read, fewer words spelled, fewer words worked on for the phonological processor, because you get distracted, lose focus, even when instructors like the ones in the Now company are highly trained to redirect you, re-engage you, use joke, use motivation, something funny to keep you focused and keep you engaging. You still are going to be losing some instructional time when the attentional system fluctuates over that instructional hour.